All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Let's continue talking about Nick Nurse. He's found a job, Philadelphia, maybe the unlikeliest destination. At least that's what Raptors fans thought, considering there is a bit of a rivalry between the 76ers and the Raptors.
Yeah, I suppose Philly know more about him than many of the candidates, right? Because they're facing so many times. I think Nick Nurse probably knows more about the Sixers than a lot of teams, considering the history as well. Yeah. So they're going to be, I guess, strangers in many regards, but there's some history, and it makes it a little bit juicy, doesn't it?
He's got a ring, and that ring is pretty fresh. It's not an old ring, right? He knows the team. Excellent coach. Let's bring in Justin Pooni, who isn't here today. He's at home, load management. He joins us right now. Pooni, your initial reaction to Nurse taking the job in Philadelphia?
Well, talk about load management. There's not going to be that much load management for Joel Embiid now. He's
going
to be playing a whole bunch of minutes come the new season. Look, my initial thought was it all makes sense as to why he bowed out of the Milwaukee Bucks job, right? We heard yesterday from Adrian Wojnarowski that it came down to the Phoenix Suns and the Philadelphia 76ers as the two teams that wanted Nick Nurse's services. His relationship with Daryl Morey and him actually want to coach the NBA MVP in Joel Embiid were the deciding factors as to why he wanted to go to the city of brotherly love. Look, I think this is a perfect fit for Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. I also think this spells the end of James Harden's time in Philadelphia because I don't see James Harden and Nick Nurse meshing very well together whatsoever. But this has to be the last straw for the 76ers and Joel Embiid. Once again, you bring in a championship-level coach. Now, say what you will about Doc Rivers, blowing leads in the playoffs and stuff like that, but he has a championship pedigree. Nick Nurse has a championship pedigree, and if they can't get it done, I'm interested to see what the contract details are for Nick Nurse, but if they can't get it done in the next couple of years, it's going to have to fall more on the players. You can't blame Doc Rivers anymore. You can't blame the coach, a new coach every year. It has to fall on the players, and it has to fall squarely on Joel Embiid if the Philadelphia 76ers want to reach their goal of winning an NBA championship.
Yeah, it's interesting that Philadelphia traded in a doctor for a nurse. You know what I'm saying?
You've been waiting since about 6 p.m. last night to say that, haven't you?
Have you seen that on Twitter? I thought I made that up all by myself.
That's pretty good.
Oh, man, that's the most common joke.
Enough. Let's move on. What's interesting to me is going to be the relationship between Joel Embiid, the MVP, and Nick Nurse, because there's a brief beef history between these two. Most recently, I think it was after game 1 of the first round against the Brooklyn Nets, Embiid kind of took a shot at Nick Nurse. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, that I saw, after the game last time, they kind of took the Nick Nurse route of begging for free throws and calling out the referees, and that did come out, and they got a lot of calls.
It was a real random, unnecessary shot from Joel Embiid, but he obviously feels some type of way about Nick Nurse.
You can't be saying those things when you're wearing a shirt that says "Best Dad Ever."
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You just can't.
You got to be a good dad. No, it doesn't. Are we, the media, the fans, making too much of this beef, quote unquote, beef between these two?
I think so. At the end of the day, it comes down to respect. And again, we go back to last year when, he made the comments about Nick Nurse complaining about calls and stuff like that. He said it beforehand that he respects Nick Nurse as a coach. And how can you not? Nick Nurse was the coach that made Joel Embiid cry in front of national TV all across North America back in 2019, right? So there's the respect factor there. I think they're both competitors, and they both have something to prove. Look, Joel Embiid and the Sixers flamed out of the playoffs this year after he finally got his MVP. They no-showed in Game 7. Nick Nurse has to prove that he's an elite coach still in the NBA after the debacle that happened this year with the Toronto Raptors. So there's a lot on the line for both these guys, and I think that's why it will work out, because they're now in a position where they both need each other. And I think Nick Nurse and Joel Embiid are smart basketball individuals, and they can make this work.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've been talking about how they know each other, right? And Nurse has game planned against Embiid more than a lot of players. Do you think that factored into the Sixers' decision to go with Nurse?
Yeah, I think so. Look, Nick Nurse knows the 76ers very well, right? I think it's kind of funny. Remember Nick Nurse's famous rants or comments at the end of this season where he said, I don't know, I want to take my time and rethink about everything. And 10 years has been a long time. That happened in Philly, guys, before a game in Philadelphia. Right. So it's just funny how the world
he knew what he was
works.
doing.
He knew what he was doing. Right. I think Nick Nurse, again, like I mentioned earlier, he wanted to coach Joel Embiid. He wanted to help this process per se, to trust it to get to its championship level. I think, the familiarity with him and the 76ers from his time in Toronto, his familiarity with Daryl Morey, right? And his willingness to want to coach Joel Embiid definitely played a massive factor, because that's why he turned down the opportunity to coach the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and potentially, another Western Conference powerhouse, because of the familiarity factor.
If you look at some of the head coaching vacancies, well, some are no more. You have the Bucks, who went with Griffin, assistant coach of the NBA Raptors. You have the 76ers, that went with Nurse. And then you have the Suns, which still have an opening after Monty Williams left. You have the Raptors opening, obviously, the Pistons there. Out of those three, how attractive are the Toronto Raptors?
It might be the least attractive right now.
Right. Yeah.
And that's not a slight on the city of Toronto or the country of Canada. So people do listening out there, don't take it like that, right? The fact of the matter is this. Look, the Detroit Pistons are a young team with a lot of young talent, right? And they're going to get another high lottery pick. Ime Udoka said that in his comments, right, beforehand. He wanted to be on a team with a higher ceiling, right? And let's face it, look, the Phoenix Suns are the Phoenix Suns. I still think, and guys, this might be a bit of a hot take, but watch out for Ty Lue. There's rumors coming out about LA that Ty Lue might get out of LA and want to go to Phoenix, right? So we'll have to see what's out there for Phoenix. But the Toronto Raptors right now, nobody really knows what their plan is, right? Their roster still has a lot of questions, right? Fred VanVleet is still, a pending unrestricted free agent. Gary Trent Jr., what's up with Pascal Siakam? What's going to happen with OG Anunoby, right? The only real consistent factor they have right now is Scotty Barnes. And while that's an attractive, calling card to coach the Raptors, it's not as much as the other openings, right? So I think the Raptors, again, they have their, their options. Just Steve Nash out there, the JJ Redicks. They've looked internationally as well. There are some names still out there, but it just depends on what their vision and what their plan is. We talked about it with the Leafs before. We talked about it about every Toronto team out there. The vision of the Toronto Raptors has not been clarified yet, and we don't know what that vision is. And I think they really need to figure out how they want to run this organization, how they want to play this game of basketball, and hire the coach that fits that mold.
Enough Leafs, Justin. I mean, just calm down. I know you're just trying to always slip the Leafs into the conversation here. The Celtics didn't get it done in the end.
What did I tell you? What did I say yesterday? I said Miami was going to win.
Yep, you did. So it's Nuggets against Heat. Okay, early thoughts on this one. Who do you have?
I think I was a big proponent of the rest factor, but now that I think about it, I think Miami right now, after coming off a big Game 7 win, and Denver going to be off for, I think, 10 days, going to become Thursday. I think, if the Heat can steal Game 1 in Denver, right, they can make this a series. Now, if you asked me a couple days ago, I would have said Nuggets in 4, but I think, the Heat have a chance, right? I still would say the Nuggets in 6, but I would not be surprised at all, guys, if the Miami Heat win the NBA championship.
Okay, I'm looking at Finals MVP. I think there's a chance that the Nuggets sweep the Miami Heat. I know it's crazy to say, but I just think the Nuggets are that good. Jokic is the clear favorite here on FanDuel, the minus 320. You can find him 290, 280 at certain places. I actually think, even though it's such a short number, you got to lay a lot of juice. There is some value in that, because I think it's his trophy, his award to win at this moment. If the Nuggets win the championship, which I expect them to do, it's going to him.
Yeah, that if the Denver Nuggets win the NBA championship, all the voters are going to give it to Nikola Jokic, right? That's just how the NBA works. When you win the NBA title, generally the best player, the guy on your team has the most cachet, is going to win the NBA Finals.
And because he probably should have got that third MVP. So it's like, we'll give you this one too.
I don't know about that. Come on, I think Joel Embiid did deserve the regular season MVP award, but that's a story for another day. It's going to be either Jimmy Butler or Nikola Jokic. We saw that in the Eastern Conference Finals MVP voting. Caleb Martin was probably the best player for the last 5 games of the Miami Heat, but Jimmy Butler still won the award because he's Jimmy Butler.
It should have been Caleb Martin. It's not even.
It should have been.
It's totally a popularity thing.
Absolutely, and I think that's why. Look, if Jamal Murray has another averages 30 plus with 50, 40, 90 shooting percentage clips again, then he has an argument. But I think, like you mentioned, it's Nikola Jokic's award to lose, unless the Miami Heat shock the world once again and defeat the Denver Nuggets in the finals.
All right, Justin, thanks so much for hopping on here on short notice. Appreciate it.
No problem, boys.
All right, that's Justin Pooni. Okay, coming up after the break, we could bring in Rob Conway. Let's talk about some hockey. The Stanley Cup Finals kick off on Saturday, so we'll talk about that, get some picks and some leans for the Conn Smythe Trophy.